Pirate Software's past sexual violations. Alright, so as we all know, Pirate Software has currently become the internet's punching bag. Nobody likes this guy. People are making millions of views, hundreds of thousands of dollars, building careers, taking shots at this individual, making fun of Pirate Software for being generally an unliked, egotistical loser, because everybody on the internet hates a narcissist. He's been getting hit from every corner of the internet. And honestly, I don't even know why anymore. Apparently the guy is such a fake it till you make it Nepo baby that every single corner, when like every single time this guy gets like dug into, it's just more lies and more embarrassing stuff about him. And recently, as you might recall, this individual known as Lyric has come out with a statement saying Pirate Software's past sexual violations. Now, the reason why this is relevant is because Lyric, for those of you who don't recall, I just said that. Lyric recently released some allegations not too long ago about how Pirate Software manipulated them and was sort of, you know, doing some sort of like fishy relationship stuff in a very, very color-coded, carefully crafted website for those of you who recall. And now, apparently, they're coming out straight up saying that Pirate Software has like sexual violations. So let's take a look. Oh yeah. This is the website, to be clear. Pirate Software sucks. Additional incidents. Pirate Software insisted on penetrative sex with X, who clearly communicated their... Okay. So it appears... Alright, so this is an anonymous individual. So we don't even know who this victim is. It just happens to be some other individual coming forward with their story to Lyric, who published allegations in the past. So already I'm going to be skeptical again, because even though these allegations... Okay, even though Pirate Software is an easy punching bag and an easy person to make fun of, I'm not going to take what people are saying against him at face value. The previous allegations were largely a nothing burger. Pirate Software more than likely was a little bit of a manipulative individual that was trying to like lie to this person to like try to get, you know, a relationship out of it. But it wasn't like insane predatory behavior. It wasn't like insane grooming or like anything like that, or any like, you know, sexual violations as is being claimed here. So, I mean, we'll see how serious this stuff is. We'll see. Pirate Software insisted on penetrative sex with X, who clearly communicated their refusal. He would force himself onto X and dry hump them. When X tried to push him away, he would forcibly push herself onto them. This would continue until Thor ejaculated. During the COVID or post-COVID era, we would have met a furry dating app called Howler. At the time, I had just wanted to know another furry game dev friend. I had no idea who he was, what game he made, or how big he was on the internet. I do not follow streamers or content creators. Howler? What? Howler? It's real! It's real, dude! When we started hanging out in my room is where things got weird. Despite me explicitly telling him I did not want penetrative sex or any bodily fluids on my bed, he kept insisting on doing sexual things. Eventually got to the point where I was pushing him away or telling him to stop, but he seemed to pretend not to hear. With him being larger than me, it wasn't exactly easy to push him off, so he continued to try me until he ejaculated. With him being larger than me, it wasn't exactly easy to push him off, so he continued to try on me until he ejaculated. This reminds me, this is so close. This is so similar. This is just way too similar. This is way too similar to the Saberspark drama, and I just can't take it seriously. Like, he came into my house, no shoes, ignored most things I said to talk about himself, immediately wanted to come inside of me despite me telling him no multiple times during the time I was having terrible nerve pain. Kept pushing himself on me as I was pushing him off. And when I told him that he shouldn't have done that, he said, you know you liked it. I pretty much blocked it all out of my mind. I wasn't particularly hurt. I just thought, wow, that was surreal. I can't believe someone like that exists. This is a surviving image of the Pirate Software Telegram at the time that X sent me. As you can see, the Telegram clearly states his handle, shows his persona, and also matches up with Pirates, just like a smoking in my own chat logs and public clips. I mean, yeah, it's plausible that some of this existed. It's entirely possible, right? It's not unlikely that this didn't exist. Kind of games are terrible outside of old school. Okay, them talking about their interests. Let me clear some of these out. Do you smoke? Nope. Cigarettes are nasty. Okay. All right. Whatever. So it's just okay. There's essentially nothing here. There's essentially no evidence. It's just a bunch of hearsay. X lectured Pirate Software after he climaxed, telling him they did not consent. After the incident, X messaged a friend about Thor's actions. They had blocked it out until they decided to reach out in 2024 after they saw Thor win the Streamer Awards for Best Software Developer. Yeah, more like not. He won the Streamer Awards for Best Software Developer, even though he wasn't even though his what? How did he? All right, dude. The Streamer Awards is rigged. After it was all done, I lectured him, saying that I had told him repeatedly not to do that. Luckily, I'm pretty thick-skinned when it comes to casual sex, but if I were anyone else, that could have been a traumatic experience. His reply was simply, "You know you liked," to which I rolled my eyes in disgust. And my bed smells like... What? This fucking guy's doing a little too ham. What? Huh? What? Very eccentric person. I don't know about you. I don't know about you, but like, I don't think cum has a smell. At least not a very, at least not a strong. What? What? That smells like a lot of. No. This doesn't, dude. I don't know how like much I want to believe this. It doesn't. Huh? It just, I don't, okay, it does have, okay, look, it has an odor, but it shouldn't be that strong. This just doesn't, I can't believe this is what we're talking about. For authenticity's sake, I can also tell you I confided in many other indie game devs Seattle over this story, and they believe me and have always known Thor to be kind of shady. I had no intention of coming out with my story and didn't care for attention, but it did weigh on my conscience because I do believe Thor should not be allowed to abuse anyone else further. I had zero idea that he was a big entity on the internet until some Game Awards show. Okay. This seems incredibly vindictive. This seems opportunistic and vindictive. Did it occur? Who knows? More than likely not. I don't think that this is a believable like set of allegations. They don't seem very credible. But at the same time, it's possible that something like this may have occurred. Probably. It's entirely possible. It seems a little bit hyperbolic, though. I'm not sure if this person even understands what these allegations were in regards to Lyric. There wasn't abuse. I mean, you could call it manipulative. You could definitely call those allegations manipulative. I wouldn't call them, like, outright abusive. It's just, you know, a guy being a gross fucking guy towards Lyric. And Lyric, like, wasn't entirely... Like, okay, Lyric wasn't entirely, like, you know... What's the word that I'm looking for here? Perfect in all of this either. But again, no perfect victims. It's just not one of those really... It's not one of those situations where you could realistically call it, like, absolutely abusive from what I recall. Because I reviewed everything on that website. It just seemed like Lyric was adding a lot of flavor to make the situation seem a lot more insane than what it actually was. And that's pretty much the case. The most you could argue that you know, Pirate Software did in regards to Lyric is that he was a little bit deceptive to try to like opportunistically get into a relationship with Lyric, which is very manipulative, but it wasn't abusive. This person is a completely naive individual, complete moron, that probably more than likely tried spinning this into something a lot more egregious than what it actually was. Pirate Software response, he downplays X's experience of being violated sexually is just a blip. Pirate's explanation for his behavior was that he simply overstepped at the time and misunderstood the situation. What? Okay, wait. Here's Pirate Software conversation with X in 2024. Thor deleted his side of the messages, but parts of Thor's messages were saved because they were discussing the response with friends. The parts that weren't saved amounted to Thor's excuse of being hurt emotionally. Let's take a look. We need to talk when you have the chance. Well, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, but our last interaction left me feeling really uncomfortable, to put it lightly, but I wanted to talk about it if you remember, before making any judgments. Again, I'm going to take these... I'm taking these DMs as well with a grain of salt because who knows how real or how fake they are. I didn't want to bring it up something 2 years later just to be spiteful or anything. I apologize it came out that way. To be real, I kind of didn't want to think about that much because it's become somewhat hard to not see you around in my circles nowadays. We can talk because you have time. There is no rush, but at the very least, knowing you are sorry is better than... It's a better thought than none. I was going through a lot of the time. That infection I told you about when we were meeting ended up being an undiagnosed chronic condition. So in a way, I didn't really have a lot of mental energy to deal with it one way or another. All right? I wish that these weren't blurred out so that I can understand who's who. I was going through a lot of the time. That infection I told... Okay. As much as it... Unless this is the person sending a message. Pirate Software is the recipient, but of course he deleted his messages. I was going through a lot of the time. Okay. As much as it would have been nice to genuinely feel like you were empathizing with my boundaries, it is hard to blame me for assuming I wouldn't want to talk. That said, as long as you kind of understand that I was upset about those things, that would go a long way to make me feel closure on the subject. I don't really want to bother you beyond that, especially if things could be amicable between us. Specifically, very vividly, I remember the line, "You know you liked it," and that really just felt inappropriate. And it would have been nice to just hear you say something more conscientious. Even just something like, "But seriously, if you didn't, I'm sorry. And I want you to tell me." Boundaries like that are really important, and at the time, I was just happy to meet another game dev friend who was even willing to be helpful and drive you around when you ask. It's pretty much all I'm asking. If some lines are blurred, there should be effort to make them clear. And I felt like I was trying to give you verbal and physical indication of those to hear. So to hear, "You know you liked it," kind of mess with me for a bit. So please, I'm not trying to vilify you or anything, just genuinely giving my opinion. When I say I'm genuinely trying to give you my opinion or how it should have been handled, I'm being sincere. But that would, okay. I'm gonna parse through these real quick. Blah blah blah. Your messages feel very shitty to me. If you enter your reputation, I would try talking to you. Regardless, I've said what I need to say. Whether you want it perfect response, no one wants to be in the position I'm in. It's situations hard for me to talk about. I know where that I statement. I'm not trying to make you feel that way, and if things again aren't clear, I'm being able to clear it up and give me personal closure. I mean, I thought I was making it clear through my words, physical actions, that certain. Again, blurred lines happen, but what happened? Nice and important. I feel like happened. I feel bad emotionally. Had I processed things too. Organ history was gone. I had no idea. Maybe you did feel awful about everything. Like we talked. Okay. I didn't think it would be either, but hey. Thank you very much. Okay, so it appears that these people did have an uncomfortable like interaction based on what I'm reading here. It definitely feels like these individuals had like okay. So the information being provided here, even though these DMs are entirely one-sided because Pirate Software wiped his logs, it does showcase that there was an uncomfortable interaction that occurred. Who knows what those interactions actually were? Because there's not a lot of detail here. So far, it's like one person saying something. Pirate Software hasn't really reciprocated any of that information so far, or even validated it yet. Contextually, it's a possibility that something similar to that may have occurred there. It's a possibility that there was, like, you know, something to have been discussed here. But even then, to, like, try to utilize this against him this far in the future, when it appears that these people made amends in the past and talked about the situation, seems kind of like an unnecessary kill shot. But I get it. It's very easy to jump on, like, the anti-Pirate Software bandwagon. Honestly, if the allegation was Pirate Software was a selfish lover / bad experience or whatever, that would be more in line. This whole thing casts more doubt on Lyric's character on the matter. That's just me. I agree. I definitely do agree. I absolutely have to agree. It definitely feels like, you know, Saber Spark all over again. But it's a lot easier to, like, just, you know, eat this stuff up because nobody likes Pirate Software in the moment. So just to summarize real quick, it appears that these individuals did have an uncomfortable interaction. Whether that interaction in and of itself was sexual in nature or not is up to your interpretation of these events and whether you want to believe what these people, whether or not you want to believe what it is that these people are saying. It could have been an entirely different interaction that is being portrayed as something else or potentially being exaggerated. Maybe this individual is talking to a couple of other friends saying, yeah, my room smelled like cum afterwards, when in reality, they were probably like just making something up. Who knows how true these claims are? I mean, the story seems pretty consistent, and these messages seem pretty consistent with there being a level of boundary crossing. But this is one of those situations that was settled privately in the past. The only way that you would want to bring something like this up again in the future wouldn't necessarily be to, like, you know, protect other victims in the future or to prevent other people from being abused in the future, but more so to, like, you know, take a shot at his reputation when it's convenient, when it's easy to hate on the guy. I just don't know how I feel about this. You need to talk when you have the chance about this. Seems very ominous. Well, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, but our last interaction. Okay. No. Okay, I see. So based on what we're seeing here, these do seem to be like real interactions with Pirate Software. Let's read his message. Sorry if I made you uncomfortable. Hey, contact, once you made it clear that things were really negative between us, I think it was communicated poorly from my side at the time, but I didn't feel like I had a better way to do it. Yep, I totally understand. I overstepped at the time and misunderstood the situation. This is starting to feel a bit like entrapment. Is there something you would like to discuss outside of trying to get me to say specific phrases? I'm not sure what you're asking me for in this interaction. It just feels like you're demanding me to say things. Very vividly, I remember that you liked it. Yeah, it does seem like there is like, okay, it does seem like there is a level of leading interaction here. It does feel like there's like a very leading interaction where they're trying to get Thor to say something more specific to it, like, to a future situation. I'm not sure how I feel about this entire thing. Maybe there was a boundary crossing, but whether it is exactly what they're laying it out to be, who knows? It doesn't seem entirely truthful. It seems very murky. Pirate's Software response, he downplays X experience being violated is just a blip. Pirate's explanation for this behavior was that simply overstepped at the time misunderstood the situation. Who cares? Without more context or like more information on their dynamic, it's very difficult to like even take this as a matter of anything. It's just Lyric trying to, again, make this a little bit more flavored in a direction where people would interpret this as a lot more negative than what it actually is. When asked for an apology for saying you liked it after he violated them, Pirate responded with accusations of entrapment, saying well, yeah, he should have a reasonable concern for this person adding what are very leading questions. Here's a note from X about what inspired them to come forward with your experience. It would be good to make a post saying something about how your post has inspired others to come forward. At least for me, that's how I feel. This person probably didn't read into what Lyric had to say because Lyric, again, was being opportunistic with how these allegations came forward, even though they did have a reason of concern. Pirate Software wasn't being completely insane. He was just being, a little bit of a douchebag. But he wasn't being an abusive, predatory maniac. Lyric isn't necessarily a victim. More so, they just had an unfortunate relationship where Thor was being, a somewhat narcissistic douchebag that was only in it for himself. The Vin Twisted story for us as hell. I hope together we can show you who else is suffering from Pirate Software's action. They don't have to be afraid to stand up to this behavior. For those of you who are skeptical, just scroll through the message for anonymous identity censored, as well as showing Pirate Software handle and counting creation date. All right. So perhaps the messages are real, but at the same time, what do these allegations mean? I think that it was just an awkward sexual interaction that is now being spun into something a lot worse than what it actually is. And unfortunately, some people, now that we're on the Pirate Software bandwagon of hating him, are going to try to utilize this as a definitive claim that he raped somebody or that he sexually assaulted somebody. And the reality is that there was a weird mix-up that even this person is alluding to, where the boundaries weren't entirely set, but there was, a weird, sexual interaction, even per their own statement, that, they're used to casual experiences. They're used to casual sexual experiences where stuff like that just happens sometimes. Because they're not foreign or alien to hookups or casual hookups or whatnot. So essentially, did Pirate Software sexually assault somebody? Probably not. It seems like this is being flavored now that Pirate Software is being very hated. It's flavored in a certain way. I would argue that there's probably a level of sexual misconduct here, but without full details, it's very difficult to know. I would want Pirate Software to address the situation in a more concise manner, in a more give his side, not in a more concise manner. I would like for him to give his part of this, his side of the story. I would like for Pirate Software to give his I can't speak. I would like for Pirate Software to give his side of the story in a more detailed fashion so that we can really see what exactly went on here. On the website, there is a rough recreation with a screenshot and the unknown individual while talking to Pirate. Yeah. I don't know how I want to take this. I'm taking this entire case with a grain of salt. I think that it is more than likely that these people had an unpleasant sexual experience that is now being turned as a sexual violation, which I just simply don't think is the case. I would like more details from both parties involved before somebody is to make a decision on this. This seems very opportunistic and very, very spite-driven. Is the most that I can say, but I'm not willing to just throw this out the window entirely, just in case there is something here to really, really condemn Pirate Software over, although it doesn't seem like that's the case.